system semalam kita tengok they depends on two cycle breathing. Okay, two cycle breathing maksudnya dia ada two inhalation and two exhalation. Kenapa dia ada two inhalation and two exhalation? Sebab dia ada two air sacs. Okay, so which is the anterior air sac and also the posterior air sac. Anterior depan, posterior belakang. Okay, so the function of this air sac is to store fresh air in the posterior and also stale air, udara yang dah digunakan dalam anterior. Okay, untuk sementara waktu. Right. Okay. So yang awak kena ingat, the major point that you have to take note is that for birds they use two cycle breathing process, and also they have the flow of the air once it enters into the bird's respiratory system. The flow of the air is unidirectional, in one direction. Masuk, simpan, lalu lung, simpan balik, and then keluar. Okay, macam tu, right? So if you look at this notes yang awak kena take note adalah istilah-istilah yang awak perlu gunakan yang awak perlu gunakan semasa, let's say like if the question were to come up in the question, okay, in the exam, you have to use the correct choice of word to explain on the condition of this air sac. So maksudnya, contohnya during inhalation, okay, during inhalation, both sets of air sac will expand. So inhalation, the air sac will expand. Expand sebab apa? Dia nak kumpulkan udara dalam air sac ni. So, posterior and also anterior at the same time will expand. Okay? Perkataan expand tu awak kena take note. Maybe you can also use the word inflate pun boleh lah. Okay? So inhale, air flows down the trachea. Dia akan masuk and then flows down the trachea tapi tak masuk lung lagi. And then it is then stored in the posterior air sac. So, in order to store the air, the air sac has to expand. Okay, has to expand. And then same goes to the anterior air sac. It also expand to store what? To store stale air. Udara yang dah digunakan coming from the lungs. Kalau posterior, it stores fresh air. Okay, kalau anterior, it stores stale air from the lungs. Fresh air from outside lah, from the atmosphere. Okay, so that is during inhalation. During exhalation, what happen is that awak jangan guna perkataan ataupun istilah yang kontra dengan expand. Awak guna macam blood vessel kan, vasodilate, vasoconstrict. Tapi yang ini, you use the word deflate. Jangan guna constrict. Constrict salah Constrict is not correct. Sebab apa saya emphasize this? Sebab kalau dulu ada student jawab, dia instead of using the term deflate, they use constrict, so that would be wrong. Okay? So during exhalation, both air sac will deflate. Dia akan mengecut ataupun dia akan deflate. And then pushing the air to the next component. Maksudnya kalau posterior, from the posterior, the fresh air will be pushed into the lung so that the oxygen can be provided, oxygen from the lung, from the parabronchi, can enter into blood vessels. Okay, so oxygen poor blood becomes oxygen rich blood. So kalau stale air ni pula akan ditolak keluar, okay, through the trachea and out, okay, through the atmosphere. Okay, so kalau untuk birds ni, dia depend on unidirectional airflow, dan dia melibatkan two inhalation and two exhalation. Okay, two inhalation and two exhalation. So if you look at this diagram, during the first inhalation, awak kena take note kat sini, maksudnya both first and second inhalation, they occur at the same time. Okay, they occur at the same time. Maksudnya, first inhalation, posterior air sac will expand to store fresh air. Okay, fresh air. So from the trachea, and then it goes straight to the posterior air sac to be stored in the posterior air sac. and at the same time, the anterior air sac also expand to store stale air from the lungs. Okay, fresh air from outside lah, through trachea. Okay, trachea. So that is during inhalation, and then after inhalation is obviously exhalation. So during exhalation, so first and second will occur at the same time. It means that during exhalation, okay, saya guna biru lah. Exhalation. Okay, exhalation, ini inhalation. During exhalation, the posterior air sac will deflate. Okay, so this will cause the fresh air to enter into lungs. Okay, enter into lungs. Okay, so and at the same time, during exhalation juga yang berlaku dekat anterior air sac, so anterior air sac will deflate. Okay, deflate, causing what? Causing stale air to enter into trachea and then to be removed or exhaled out. Okay, exhale out into the atmosphere. Okay, into the atmosphere. So that is for bird respiratory system. Okay, one unidirectional airflow, and it involves two-cycle breathing system kan, two-cycle breathing process. Okay. Sebab apa? What is the significance of this process? So this is to make sure that the lung is continuously supplied with oxygen. Okay, the lung is continuously supplied with oxygen even though in the process of exhalation. Kita kalau human, if we exhale, at that point there's no you are not inhaling oxygen. Faham tak? Okay, so oxygen tak masuk. Tapi kalau bird, walaupun exhalation, the lung is continuously supplied with air that has oxygen. Okay. Alright. Okay, so I hope that that covers for the respiratory system for birds. If you have question, you can ask. If not, we can continue on the next part, which is to identify and describe the structure and function of human respiratory system. So now we are going to look at the human respiratory system. Okay. So far, do you have any question yang kita dah cover semalam sebelum kita move on to the next part?
No, madam.
Tak ada, Okay. Okay, so breathing. So this is the definition of breathing. So you need to know the definition for breathing. It is a mechanical process of moving air from the atmosphere, okay, into the lungs and expelling air from the lung into the atmosphere. Okay, the atmosphere is it has air that has oxygen, obviously, to enter into the lungs. Okay, and then the carbon dioxide produced by your body needs to be removed, and the and this is through the lungs. Okay, so the lungs will remove oxygen. Will remove carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. Okay, so mammal use negative pressure breathing. Okay, negative pressure breathing, pulling air into the lungs. Semalam kita tengok kalau frogs, they use positive pressure breathing. They create a high pressure inside the buccal cavity, and then the high pressure will be pushed into the lungs. Okay, but for mammals, we use negative pressure breathing, pulling air into the lungs. So it means that outside, okay, in the atmosphere, okay, the pressure, especially the partial pressure of oxygen, is high compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in the lung. Okay, so the atmosphere has higher pressure, and this causes the air to be able to enter into the lung. Okay, so for this one, it follows Boyle's law. Okay, according to Boyle's law, when the volume of a given quantity of gas increases, its pressure decreases. So this one we are going to refer to the pressure inside the lung. Okay, so in order for the air outside to enter into our lungs, pressure inside the lungs has to be reduced. And how to reduce the pressure? You increase the volume of your lungs. Okay, you increase the volume of the lung. So if volume increase, pressure decrease. So this is referring to what happened in the lung. So you inhale, volume increases, okay, your lung expand, and also the pressure inside your lung will decrease, forcing air into the lung. Okay, forcing air from the atmosphere into your lungs. Okay. So inhaling is referred to as inspiration, and exhaling is expiration. So this is just terms. Okay, so ini just macam analogy lah. So here you this film here, sheath, it function as your diaphragm. Okay, so during kita tengok dulu during your expiration lah, during inhalation. Kita tengok dulu untuk inhalation. Okay, inhalation or inspiration. So the atmosphere has higher pressure. Okay, the atmosphere has higher pressure. You want to create a lower pressure inside the lung, so you increase the volume inside the lung. So at this point, the diaphragm will move down, and creating this is to create this is to allow the lung to expand. Okay, so the volume increases, and so the pressure inside the lung decrease. Okay, the pressure inside the lung is decreased. Then the air from outside can enter into the trachea, into the bronchus, okay, bronchioles, and then into both of the lungs. Okay, so during exhalation or expiration, so what happened is that the diaphragm will move up, and then causing the volume to decrease and pressure increase. So the increased pressure will push the air from the lung, the used air, the air that has carbon dioxide, to be pushed out and exhaled or removed from the lung and enters into the atmosphere. Okay. So ini konsep ni saya harap awak faham ya. Ini awak dah belajar dah, even in physics. Okay. Okay, so the next terms is respiration. So it is a process of gas exchange between organism and its environment. Okay, so during respiration, oxygen from the environment is taken up and delivered to individual cells in your body. Is taken up, enters into the lungs, and then from the lungs, kita belajar circulatory system hari tu kan, from the lungs it goes back to the heart, so that the heart can pump the blood with oxygen throughout your body, okay, through the systemic circuit. So oxygen is taken up from the environment, obviously, and at the same time, carbon dioxide generated during cellular respiration is excreted into the environment through the lung lah kan. So the lung is the organ responsible to remove the carbon dioxide, okay, during exhalation. So the respiratory system of human consists of the lungs and a series of tubes. Okay, so trachea, tracheoles, semua tu kan, bronchioles. Okay, so those are tubes. Okay, so breathing to move air from the environment to lungs and expelling air from the lungs. Okay, move air from the environment as the air contains oxygen, and expel air that has carbon dioxide from the lung. Okay, into the atmosphere lah semula kan, into the environment. Okay, so air enters the body through the nostrils and flows through the nasal cavity. Yang ini kita nak tengok pula laluan udara tu lah kan. So you breathe in through your nostril and enters into the nasal cavity. So nostrils and nasal cavity. Okay, nasal cavity. So the air passes through the nose. It is filtered, moistened, and brought to body temperature. So this one you have to remember. What happened to the air? It is filtered. Why? Because your nose has hair. Okay, so this function to filter any contaminants that enters with the air that you breathe in. Moistened. Okay, it is also moistened and brought to body temperature. So kalau awak breathe in cold air, tak adalah udara sejuk tu masuk dalam badan awak. It is bring to your body temperature. Okay, so the nasal cavity is lined with a moist ciliated epithelium that is rich in blood vessels. Okay, so moist so that the air can be moistened, and then ciliated epithelium and rich in blood vessels. Kan, the blood that flows in the blood vessels carry heat from your body metabolism. So this will bring the air to your body temperature. Okay. So cells lining the epithelium produces mucus to trap inhaled dirt, bacteria, and other foreign particles. So yang if you notice this dia dia related to your immune system jugalah kan. So obviously the air that you breathe in obviously contains pathogens or pollutants or other stuff that's supposed to not enter into your lungs. So these are trapped by the mucus. Okay, the mucus. So this is the flow lah kan. So for nostril, nasal cavity, yang ini awak kena ingat what happened in the nasal cavity, and then after that it enters into the next part, which is the pharynx. Okay, so the pharynx is the junction that connects between your respiratory system. So respiratory dia akan masuk ke dalam larynx and then trachea lah. Okay, before it enters into your lung. Dan juga pharynx dia akan junction to your digestive system. So from the pharynx, kalau masuk ke digestive system, it enters into the esophagus. So kalau kita tengok ni, kat depan ada your trachea, belakang ada esophagus. Junction dia adalah pharynx. So orang yang makan gelojoh tercekik semua tu, sebab apa? Sebab makanan tu instead of masuk ke dalam esophagus, it enters into your airways. Okay, so epiglottis ni fungsi dia bila awak swallow makanan, epiglottis ni dia akan tutup laluan ni. Okay, so your bolus is supposed to enter into your esophagus, but kalau you are choking, so dia akan masuk, instead of esophagus, dia akan masuk ke dalam your airways, okay, your larynx before it enters into the trachea. Okay, so next, the back of the nasal cavity is continuous pharynx lah, yang saya cakap tadi. So pharynx, okay, kat sini junction between respiratory and also digestive system. Okay, so because we are looking at respiratory system, so from pharynx it enters into the next part, which is the larynx. Okay, an opening in the floor of the pharynx leads to a larynx, which is Adam's apples or your voice box. Okay, and then from larynx it enters to the next airway, which is the trachea or the windpipe. Okay, so kena ingat lah, nostril, nasal cavity, pharynx, and then larynx, and then the trachea. Okay. Okay, so the structure of the airways. Okay, your tubes. Okay, so the structure of the trachea and the primary bronchi. So it is made up of basically cartilage. Okay, kalau kita tengok dalam insect semalam, in order to make sure that the airway is always open for insect, the trachea is made up of chitin. But for human or mammals, the trachea, your airways, is made up of cartilage. So this is to make sure that the airway is keep open. So if it were made up of muscle, macam tengok kat sini, so kita ada trachea kat depan kan, kat belakang is your esophagus. Esophagus is made up of muscle. Okay, muscle. So nampak dia akan collapse. Tapi kalau trachea, it has to maintain open, so it is composed of cartilage. Okay. So this is the trachea, and then from the trachea it branches into the right primary bronchus to the right lungs, and then left primary bronchus, okay, to the left lungs. Okay. Alright. Okay, so next the trachea divides into two branches, the bronchi, each of which is connected to a lung. So your right lungs and your left lungs. Okay, So right lungs, you can see here it has three lobes. 1, 2, 3 lah, lebih kurang macam tu kan. Tapi kalau left lung, it has 2 lobes. Okay, 2 lobes. 1, 2. Right? So heart is in between here. Right. Okay, so both trachea and bronchi are aligned by mucous membrane. So the trachea, your airways, are aligned by mucous membranes. Okay, and then it is also has cilia, okay, ciliated cells to trap dirt, bacteria and other particles. So the mucus trap, and then the cilia will swipe the mucus containing all the contaminant upwards, so that it can then be swallowed in the esophagus. Okay. Okay, so the lungs are large, paired and spongy organs occupying the thoracic cavity or the chest cavity. Okay, so the right lungs has 3 lobes and the left lung has 2 lobes. Okay. So covered with pleural membrane. So yang nampak warna biru ni is the pleural membrane. Okay, pleural membrane. So pleural membrane forms a continuous sac. Okay, kantung, a continuous sac that encloses the lung lining the thoracic cavity. So inside the pleural membrane, there is pleural cavity. Okay, pleural cavity that contains liquid. We call it as pleural fluid lah. So the function of this liquid or fluid is to function as lubrication. Okay, lubrication between the lungs and the chest wall. So the expansion of the lungs. So in order to reduce friction, so you have to the lungs is protected or lubricated by the presence of these pleural fluids. Okay, so inside the lungs is bronchi. Okay, inside the lung is bronchi, branches that gives to million of tiny bronchioles. Okay, so ini kan so bronchi or bronchus, bronchi banyak kan. Okay, so bronchus branches into bronchioles, and then each bronchioles end up in a tiny cluster of air sac, which is the alveolus. Okay, so each bronchioles and in a cluster of air sac, which is the alveoli, alveoli plural. Okay, singular alveolus. Okay, so each alveolus is lined by an extremely thin single layer of epithelial cells. So this is the characteristics of alveolus. It must be thin. Okay, it must be thin. It is one cell thick, and the wall is made up of epithelial cells. So what is the significance of the alveolus being thin? So that it allows for the diffusion of respiratory gas. Okay, gases diffuses freely into the walls of the alveolus and into the capillary that surrounding the alveolus. Okay, so remember the alveolus. Okay, it is one cell thick. The blood capillary surrounding the alveolus is also one cell thick. Kita belajar kan ciri blood capillaries hari tu, it is also one cell thick. So what is the significance of this structure being one cell thick? So that it reduces the distance for the gas for the respiratory gas to diffuse across this structure. Okay, decreases the distance. Okay, so if the distance is decreased, so therefore the rate of diffusion of respiratory gas will increase. Okay, the rate of diffusion. Okay, the rate of diffusion or gas exchange will increase. Okay, so now we are going to look at the next structure, which is the diaphragm. Okay, so the muscular floor here. Okay, the muscular floor of the thoracic cavity is the diaphragm. So the inner pleural membrane cavity is called the visceral pleural. Tadi kita tengok pleural membrane kan. So pleural membrane ni bahagian dalam dia kan, bahagian dalam dia yang ini kan. So nama membrane dia adalah pleural membrane. Layer yang kat luar kita namakan dia sebagai parietal pleural. Okay, pleural membrane ni maksudnya dia ada 2 layer lah, inside and outside. The inner side is the visceral pleural, The outer side of the membrane is the parietal pleural membrane. Okay, so itu that one you have to remember lah. Okay. Okay, so next. Okay, so this is the structure of the human respiratory system. Just wait for the slide to change. Okay. So, the human respiratory system, it starts with the nostril lah, nostril, and then nasal cavity. From the nasal cavity, the air will move down to the pharynx, and then to the larynx. Esophagus tak lah, esophagus is the digestive system, and then from larynx into the trachea, okay, and then into the bronchus, bronchus, and then bronchioles lah, and before which is in the right and the left lungs. Okay, right and the left lungs. So right lungs, 3 lobes. So the left lung has 2 lobes. Okay, in between there's the heart. Okay. Okay, so the other one, the diagram on this side here, it shows you the arrangement of the alveolus, okay, and the blood capillaries surrounding the alveolus. So you have these 2 blood vessels. Okay, these 2 blood vessels, as you can see here, you have the pulmonary artery. Pulmonary artery, it carries oxygen poor blood coming from the heart. Ini kita belajar dah itu circulatory system. Pulmonary artery, it carries oxygen poor blood coming from the heart. So this oxygen poor blood will from oxygen poor blood, gas exchange will occur. Oxygen poor blood, obviously it has high concentration of carbon dioxide and low concentration of oxygen. Okay, of the alveolus, okay, will have a high concentration of oxygen, obviously. So oxygen from the alveolus diffuse into the blood capillaries. Carbon dioxide from the blood capillaries diffuse out into the alveolus. So you have to know the direction of the diffusion of these gases. Oxygen from alveolus into blood capillaries. Okay, carbon dioxide from blood capillaries into the alveolus. Okay. So from oxygen poor blood, then it becomes oxygen rich blood. Okay, oxygen rich blood that enters into the pulmonary vein. Pulmonary vein, kita belajar, it carries oxygen rich blood, and then it is delivered to your heart again. Okay, so that the heart can pump oxygen rich blood throughout the body in the systemic circuit. Okay. Okay, so these are the characteristics or adaptation of alveoli. Okay, adaptation, the characteristics. Boleh slash kat sini. Okay, boleh slash kat sini, characteristics. Okay, characteristics of alveoli that allows the alveoli to be able or to involve in gas exchange. Okay, in gas exchange. So one of the characteristics of alveoli is that it has high surface area. Okay, large surface area for gas exchange. So tengok dekat sini kan. So it is highly folded. Okay, so that this will provide the alveolus with large surface area. And then the surface of the alveoli are moist. Nanti kita akan tengok inside the alveoli, there's a thin film of moisture. Kalau kita tengok kat another slide, kalau ada, ni, okay, film of moisture. So this allows the alveolus to be kept moist, and also to make sure that respiratory gases can dissolve before it goes or before the process of diffusion occurs. Yeah, so in order for the respiratory gas to diffuse, it has to dissolve first. Dissolve and then diffuse. Okay, dia tak boleh diffuse terus. Dia kena dissolve and then diffuse. So moist. Okay, the surface of the alveoli is they are moist. Okay, so ada thin film of moisture tu tadi. For gases to dissolve before diffusion occurs. Kena dissolve baru diffuse. Okay. And then the alveoli have thin walls. It is one cell thick because it is made up of apa tadi? Epithelial cells. Okay, one cell thick. So this allow gas to dissolve and diffuse easily. It reduces the distance for the respiratory gas to move from one region to another region, from the alveolus into blood capillaries for oxygen, for carbon dioxide from the blood capillaries into the alveolus. Okay, so this cause the distance for the oxygen or carbon dioxide to move to be reduced. Okay, this will increase the rate of gas exchange. And then the alveoli are surrounded by numerous blood capillaries to allow for large volume of gas exchange. Okay, so these are the characteristics of adaptation of alveoli to enhance gas exchange. Okay, to enhance gas exchange. So ini kalau awak tengok alveolus under electron microscope. Okay, so ini dah. Okay, so next is the fixed law of diffusion. Okay, banyak pula fizik hari ni ya. Okay, so the diffusion process in respiration is passive. Obviously, the process of diffusion is a passive transport. Okay, so driven only by the difference in oxygen and carbon dioxide concentration. So on both sides of the membrane, it is referring to the membrane of blood capillaries and also the membrane of alveolus. Yeah, so the oxygen from the air sac from the alveolus into the blood capillaries, carbon dioxide from blood capillaries into the alveolus. So mesti ada perbezaan dari segi concentration of these two gases. Or we can also use it in the correct way is what we call it as partial pressure. Okay, partial pressure of oxygen or partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Okay, so in general, the rate of diffusion between the two regions is governed by the fixed law of diffusion. Okay, so it says here amount of oxygen or carbon dioxide that diffuse across the membrane of an alveolus depends on the difference in partial pressure of these two gases, partial pressure of oxygen and also partial pressure of carbon dioxide. Okay, on the two sides of the membrane and on the surface area of the membrane. Surface area mestilah increase, so that's why the alveolus is surrounded by many blood capillaries. So this allows for more diffusion of gases, and the alveolus is highly folded, also increase the surface area for gas to diffuse through this structure. Okay. Alright. So kita nak tengok dalam keadaan dua tempat yang berbeza ni, in the alveolus, in the alveoli, and also in your body tissues of organs. Okay, dua tempat yang berbeza dari segi partial pressure of oxygen and also partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So if you look at in this diagram, the alveolus, inside the alveolus, the partial pressure of oxygen is roughly 100 mm mercury. Dalam slide ni, dalam diagram ni dia bagi 100. Nanti bila kita tengok slide lain, dia bagi dalam range partial pressure of oxygen, ada yang 104, ada yang dia bagi 105. So tapi dalam slide ni dia bagi 100 mm mercury. Okay, tapi anyhow dia nak indicate in the alveolus, partial pressure of oxygen is high, 100 or 104 or 105 in other slides lah. Sama je. Okay. So and then in the alveolus also the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is low, which is around 40 mm mercury. Okay. So if you look at this, so in the alveoli, the concentration of oxygen is greater, okay, in the alveolus compared to in the pulmonary capillaries, in the blood vessels surrounding the alveolus. Okay, so so the oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood capillaries. Kalau kat sini saya boleh bagi for instance, this is in the lung lah kan, in the lungs, partial pressure of oxygen. Saya seragamkan lah. Yang ni awak sebab nak bagi mudah faham kita refer pada slide-slide yang lain. Awak buat 105. Okay, 105 mm mercury in the alveolus, and in the blood capillaries. In other slides kita akan refer, the partial pressure of oxygen is 100 mm mercury. So the partial pressure in the alveolus 105 is higher compared to 100. Okay, so oxygen from alveolus diffuse into the blood capillaries, to be specific, in the pulmonary capillaries lah nama dia. Okay, so in the pulmonary capillaries. So kalau kita tengok juga dekat, okay, so this will cause the blood to become oxygen rich blood. Okay, become oxygen rich blood. So this oxygen rich blood, dia punya partial pressure of oxygen is 100. Okay, 100. So it travels in the systemic circuit and enters in the capillaries of organs. Okay, tissue of many organs. Okay, so the partial pressure, yang ni still maintain kat sini, partial pressure of oxygen is still 100. Okay, partial pressure of oxygen in your body tissues is 40. Okay, 40. Saya tulis baik semula. Oxygen is 40 mm mercury. So 100 versus 40, obviously 100 is higher than 40. So oxygen from blood capillaries into diffuse out and enters into your body cells, your body tissue, cells of body tissues. Okay, so itu kalau untuk oksigen. Okay, so kalau untuk carbon dioxide pula, okay, carbon dioxide, kalau kita tengok kat sini, here is the blood capillaries that carries oxygen poor blood. Okay, oxygen poor blood, the partial pressure of oxygen is low. Sorry, the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is high. Which is kita boleh ambil dalam area 40, 46 or 45 mm mercury. Okay, millimeter mercury. So ini apa? Partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So partial pressure of carbon dioxide in this blood capillary that enters into the alveolus kat sini. So partial pressure of carbon dioxide that is 46 is higher compared to 40 and compared to 40. So 46, 40, 46 lagi besar. So carbon dioxide diffuse from blood capillaries into the alveolus. So the difference in the partial pressure is really significant in allowing the movement or the diffusion of these respiratory gases. So kena tahu partial pressure untuk oksigen dengan carbon dioxide adalah berbeza dalam alveolus dan juga dalam blood capillaries. Between alveolus, between blood capillaries, these two partial pressure are different for these two gases. Sama juga they reach your body tissues, then partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide will also be different, that favors the movement of these gases. Kalau your body cell, obviously it undergoes cellular respiration to produce carbon dioxide. So partial pressure of carbon dioxide, kalau kita tengok slide yang lain, dia akan cakap lebih daripada more than 46 mm mercury. So high concentration of carbon dioxide in the cell causes carbon dioxide to diffuse into your blood capillaries with lower partial pressure of carbon dioxide, which is around, dia just bagi 40 macam tu, 40 or 45. Yang ni more than 46 macam tu. Okay. So So the rate of diffusion is determined by tadi the fixed law of diffusion. So this is the formula. Okay, so far tak ada lagi ditanya untuk awak kira guna ataupun calculate guna this equation. What important is that you must know this, what does D means, R means, A means, and delta P, D ni semua. So these are the factors that will affects the rate of diffusion. Okay, so R is the rate of diffusion, which is the amount of gas or the amount of oxygen or carbon dioxide diffusing per unit of time. D is the diffusion constant. So ini kita boleh ignore. Ini kita tak kacau. Yang kita akan tengok adalah the A, the area. Okay, the area over which the diffusion takes place. So obviously to increase rate of diffusion, the area has to increase. So that's why kita ada banyak alveolus. Alveolus pun it is highly folded. Okay, so this increases the area for diffusion to occur. So rate of diffusion also increase. Difference in partial pressure, delta P here. Okay, so the difference in the concentration of the gas of carbon dioxide and also oxygen. Okay, so mesti ada perbezaan concentration yang macam kita tengok tadi. Perbezaan concentration of oxygen in the alveolus compared to in the blood capillaries. In your cells, body cells, and also blood capillaries. So there must be difference in the partial pressure of oxygen and also carbon dioxide. Okay, so the partial pressure the difference in the partial pressure has to be significant, has to be significant lah in order to increase rate of diffusion. And then distance. Okay, distance D. So distance must be short. Okay, short distance. So that's why the membrane of alveolus and also the membrane of blood capillaries, they are one cell thick. Okay, so this is to shorten the distance for the gas to diffuse through. Okay, the distance across which the diffusion takes place. So the shorter the distance, the higher the rate of diffusion. Okay, so factors that affects the increment of R, rate of diffusion increases. Okay, so increase in surface area lah tadi kan, highly folded surface area, the alveolus. Okay, and then the decrease of the diffusion distance kan, the one cell thick of alveolus and also the blood capillaries, they are one cell thick, so this shorten the distance for the gas to diffuse through. And then difference in partial pressure. Okay, higher gas concentration difference between inside and outside of the respiratory surface. Outside, nanti kita akan tengok partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere is 159, something like that. Okay, compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus. Okay, it is 105 compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood capillaries. Okay, which is 100 compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in your body tissues, which is 40 kot tadi kan, 40. Nah, 40. Okay, 40. So nampak tak dia punya perbezaan dari segi partial pressure of oxygen into oxygen. Carbon dioxide pun sama jugalah apply. Okay, so from the atmosphere 159, and then goes down into the alveolus 105, and then into your blood capillaries 100, and then in your body tissues which is 40. So nampak ada perbezaan dari segi tekanan partial pressure of oxygen tu. Okay, same goes to the carbon dioxide also. Okay, obviously in your body cells that produces carbon dioxide, so carbon dioxide is higher in your body tissue compared in the blood capillaries, compared in the alveolus, compared in the atmosphere. So itu kalau carbon dioxide, body tissues, blood capillaries, lungs, and then the atmosphere. Okay, vice versa dengan oxygen lah. So the gas will diffuse faster if the difference in pressure or the surface area increase. Cuma yang nak kena decrease adalah distance tu je. Okay, area and partial pressure has to be high to increase the rate of diffusion. Okay. So next is the Daltons law of partial pressure. So the next law pula banyak. Okay. So according to the Daltons law of partial pressure, it is when a mixture of gases, in a mixture of gases, the total pressure of the mixture is the sum of the pressure of the individual gases. So obviously in the atmosphere you have oxygen, you have nitrogen, you have carbon dioxide, you have other inert gases. So the total pressure of these gases is similar if these gases were to be existed alone. Macam tu, okay? So each gas exert independently of the other a partial pressure, the same pressure it would exert if it were present alone. So dalam atmosphere ada oxygen, ada carbon dioxide, ada nitrogen, ada inert gases. Okay? Nitrogen Na2 Nitrogen formula dia apa? N2 Okay. So next, partial pressure. Okay, so these are the component of gases in the atmosphere. So the gases that are present in the atmosphere, you have the nitrogen, oxygen, argon, and also other inert gases and also carbon dioxide. So nitrogen, the total percentage for nitrogen that are present in the atmosphere is 78.09%. Okay, oxygen 20.95%, argon 0.93%, and inert gases and also carbon dioxide is 0.03%. Okay, ini percentage of these gases in the atmosphere. So the total atmospheric pressure at sea level is 760 millimeter mercury. This is the total atmospheric pressure exerted by these gases. Okay, 760 millimeter mercury. So each type of gases contribute to the total atmospheric pressure according to its fraction of the total molecule present. So the fraction contributed by a gas is called as partial pressure. So kita nak tengok partial pressure of oxygen dengan partial pressure of carbon dioxide. So how do you determine the partial pressure of oxygen and carbon dioxide? Kalikan lah, kan? Dia punya fraction kali dengan total atmospheric pressure. Fraction dia kali dengan total atmospheric pressure. So, kalau kita tengok, so thus at sea level, the partial pressure of oxygen, nitrogen and also carbon dioxide are, kalau untuk nitrogen, 760 kali dengan composition dia berapa? Tadi 78.09, dapat 593.5 millimeter mercury. Ini untuk nitrogen lah, tapi sebab kita nak emphasize on respiratory gases, okay, oxygen and also carbon dioxide. So 760 for oxygen ni, kalikan dengan dia punya composition which is 20.95%, you get 159.2 millimeter mercury. So you can see that the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere is higher compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in the lungs, okay, which is 105. Okay, so the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, macam mana nak dapat total atmospheric pressure kali dengan dia punya fraction dia 0.03%, 0.03%, you get 0.2 millimeter mercury in the atmosphere. Okay, so each gas moves from the region of higher partial pressure to a lower partial pressure. Okay, so ini saya tulis balik semula. Sama je, partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere 159 higher compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in the lungs, which is 105, which is higher compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in the blood capillaries, which is 100, which is higher compared to the partial pressure of oxygen in your body tissues, which is 40 millimeter mercury. Okay, tu kalau untuk oksigen. Awak cari pula, awak punya homework, buat benda yang sama untuk carbon dioxide. Okay, so carbon dioxide berapa pula? So this is your homework. Alright. So increase in partial pressure ensures efficient gas exchange, which is the delta P here in the Fick's law. So the difference in the partial pressure has to be significant in order to make sure that the rate of diffusion of these gases increase. Okay. So in human, just wait for the slide to move. Okay. So in human, the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus is 105. Okay, 105 millimeter mercury, which is lesser than the partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere. Boleh tulis kat sini lah to make it more clearer. Okay, partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere is 159 millimeter mercury. Terok dapat dengan cara apa? 760 kali dengan 21 tadi itulah. Dan 20 point something tadi tu. Okay. So you get 159 millimeter mercury for partial pressure of oxygen in the atmosphere. So the blood that, so kita tengok kat sini lah kan, inhaled air, kita buat kat sini 159. Okay. In the alveolar space, the partial pressure of oxygen is 105. Okay, yang nombor 2 tu. Okay, so oxygen enters into the alveolus. So in the alveolar capillaries, blood capillaries surrounding the alveolus, the partial pressure of oxygen is 100. Okay, so oxygen from the alveolus diffuse into the blood capillaries, and then the blood will become oxygen-rich blood. Okay, and then it travels through the pulmonary veins, enter into the lung enter into the heart, so that the heart pumps the oxygen-rich blood into the systemic circuit. Okay, so this is the blood capillaries surrounding your body tissues. So in the systemic capillaries, the oxygen pressure is still the same, 100 millimeter mercury, compared to the oxygen partial pressure in your body tissue, which is 40 millimeter mercury. So oxygen in the blood will diffuse into your body tissues to allow cellular respiration to use, okay, so that the cell can generate energy. Okay, so at higher altitude, yang ni, kalau kita tengok untuk yang carbon dioxide pun sama jugalah, kita back semula. Okay, carbon dioxide, your body tissues, the byproduct is carbon dioxide. The byproduct of cellular respiration is carbon dioxide. So the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is more than 46 millimeter mercury. Okay, which is higher compared to the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in your blood capillaries, which is, if I'm not mistaken, it is 46 ataupun 45. Okay, so carbon dioxide diffuse out of your body tissues into blood capillaries, and the blood will become oxygen poor blood that enters into the pulmonary arteries. Okay, so from the pulmonary arteries, bukan pulmonary arteries, systemic vein lah, vena cava tu lah kan. So vena cava, and then it enters into the heart, the right side of the heart, so that the heart can pump the oxygen poor blood back to the lungs. So the lungs the partial pressure here is still 46, 45 macam tu, which is higher compared to the partial pressure in the alveolus. Alveolus is 40 if I'm not mistaken, 40. Ada tadi terus 40. Okay, 40 in the lungs. Okay. So nampak mesti from high to low. Okay, from high and then to lower partial pressure. Okay. Okay, so at higher, ini saya dah bagi dah dia punya partial pressure tu tadi kan. Yang ini lah, so you boleh completekan yang untuk carbon dioxide pula yang kat bawah dia. Okay. Okay, so at higher altitudes with 20.95% of oxygen, the atmospheric pressure will drop, okay, to up to 380 mm mercury. So at higher altitude, walaupun fraction of oxygen is still the same, but the partial pressure of oxygen will drop. So partial pressure of oxygen, kalikanlah dengan atmospheric pressure 380 bagi dengan fraction dia, percentage of oxygen available, which is 20.9%. So you will get at higher altitude, the partial pressure of oxygen will be lower, which is 80, compared to the partial pressure in the lung. In the lung tadi, what is 105. So tak boleh nak masuk oxygen in the atmosphere at higher altitude. The partial pressure of oxygen is lower, 80, compared to your lung is 105. Tak boleh nak masuk. Okay. So that is what happened at higher altitude. So this reduce in partial pressure of oxygen prevent oxygen from entering into the lung. So this is because the partial pressure of oxygen in the alveolus is higher, which is 105. Okay. Lungs, partial pressure of oxygen is 105, which is higher compared to the partial pressure of oxygen at higher altitude, which is 80 mm mercury. Tak boleh masuk. Okay. So you have to gasping for more air. Or kena force. Okay. Okay. So next, process of gas exchange and gas transport. So before we proceed, saya nak kita take a break first. Okay, bukan break first, break dulu. For you to understand yang ni, partial pressure ni, hadapkan dulu, digestkan dulu before we move on to the next part. Okay. Okay, so now we are going to proceed with the next part, process of gas exchange and also gas transport. So gas exchange, so obviously the two gases involved are oxygen and carbon dioxide. So for oxygen, in inhalation air, in inhaled air dissolve in a film of moisture on the epithelial cells, diffuse across the epithelium and into the blood capillaries. So ini adalah direction lah. So it shows you the direction of oxygen diffusion. Okay. So obviously for oxygen in the airspace of the alveolus, kan, partial pressure of oxygen tu, and then they akan diffuse. They akan dissolve in this film of moisture. Okay, so dissolve dulu baru dia boleh diffuse. Okay, dissolve and then diffuse across the epithelium. Epithelium of what? Epithelium of alveolus and also blood capillaries. Okay, capillaries, as both of these structure, the wall are made up of epithelial cells. That is one cell thick. Okay. So for carbon dioxide, vice versa lah, kan? So for carbon dioxide, diffuses in the opposite way from the blood capillaries. So blood capillaries has high concentration of carbon dioxide across the epithelium of alveolus into the airspace of alveolus and out of the body as exhaled air. Okay. So kalau carbon dioxide, opposite lah, from blood capillaries into the alveolus and out through exhalation. So if you look at this diagram, from pulmonary artery ni they carry oxygen poor blood. Okay. And then dia akan melalui alveolus, exchange of gas will occur, carbon dioxide from blood capillaries into the alveolus and then out. Okay, and then out. Kalau oxygen from the atmosphere into the alveolus, dissolve and then into the blood capillaries. Okay. So pulmonary vein, it carries oxygen rich blood back to the heart. Okay, so the alveolar air, okay, and the blood capillaries are separated by two cell layers. Okay, two cell layers. Kenapa two cell layers? Keluar pula. Okay, two cell layers. One is the one cell thick of alveolus, kan? The wall of the alveolus is one cell thick, and then the blood vessels, and the blood vessels surrounding the alveolus is also one cell thick. So two layers lah. Okay, two layers. So kalau kat sini kita tengok dalam gambar rajah ni, in this diagram, structure ni kita namakan dia, kenapa dia terkeluar ni? Okay. Respiratory membrane. Okay, respiratory membrane is here. And this is respiratory membrane, which involve alveolar epithelium, the wall of alveolus, that is one cell thick made up of epithelial cells, and then the wall of blood capillaries. Okay, the wall of blood capillaries, which is the endothelium, it is also one cell thick. And then in between, there's the two wall is fused together by basal lamina. Okay, basal lamina here. So this is respiratory membrane. Okay, basically it is two cell layers. Okay, so the distance between the air and the blood is only 0.5. Kenapa ni? Okay, 0.5 to 1.5 micrometer. So this allow rapid diffusion of gases, decreasing D in the Fick's law. So if you look at this diagram, dalam alveolus kita juga untuk immune system, untuk defend against infection of pathogen that tries enter into the lung, there's presence of macrophage. Okay, macrophage, and then there's a type of cell type 2 cell ni ya, which is surfactant secreting cell. Surfactant secreting cell, what is that? Because your alveolus, it is an air sac, it is one cell take, and it has a film of moisture. This causes the alveolus to have a higher tendency of collapsing. Okay, so imagine lah ambil plastik yang nipis, awak letakkan dia air, awak basahkan, dia akan collapse, dia akan melekat. So to prevent the alveolus from collapsing, so there's this cell that produces a substance or a liquid, which is, we call it as the surfactant, that maintains the structure of the alveolus, preventing the alveolus from collapsing. Okay. Okay, so next, gas exchange. So gas exchange between alveoli and also blood capillaries. So each alveolus serves as a tiny depot from which oxygen is loaded into the blood by capillaries. Okay, so the alveolus function as the storage area where oxygen is stored before it is loaded into your blood in the blood capillaries. Okay. So we are going to look at what happened in gas exchange that occurs in the lungs. Okay, in the lungs first. So sama je benda, konsep dia sama asalkan awak faham concentration or partial pressure of oxygen and also carbon dioxide. The difference in the partial pressure, it is the same thing. So if you look at this diagram here, obviously the gas exchange in the lung involves the movement or the diffusion of oxygen and also carbon dioxide. So alveoli, the partial pressure of oxygen is high. Tadi 105 millimeter mercury. So oxygen diffuse from the air sac from the alveoli into the blood, in the blood capillaries, where the partial pressure of oxygen is 100. Okay, so diffuse. So the concentration of oxygen is more concentrated in the alveolus than in the pulmonary capillaries. So oxygen diffuses from the alveoli into the blood. Same goes to the carbon dioxide. It is more concentrated. Okay, it is more concentrated in the blood, which is study 46 millimeter mercury compared to the in the alveoli. Partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 40. So carbon dioxide is more concentrated in the blood than in the alveoli. So carbon dioxide diffuses out of the capillaries into the alveoli. Okay. So next is what happened in your body tissues, in tissues of different organs. Okay, exchange in tissues. Okay, so gas is more concentrated in the blood than in the body cells. It diffuses out of the capillaries into your body cells. Okay, so kalau kita tengok kat sini, ini adalah blood capillaries containing red blood cells. Okay, that has hemoglobin to carry the oxygen. Okay, so in the blood capillaries, the partial pressure of oxygen is 100. The partial pressure of oxygen in your body tissues is 40. Okay, so obviously from 100 to 40, oxygen diffuse into your body tissues. Your body tissue, the cells of your body tissue undergo cellular respiration to use the oxygen, and the byproduct is carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide partial pressure dia tadi is 46. Kan? Dia akan the carbon dioxide will diffuse out from your body tissue and then diffuse across the wall of the blood vessels and enters into your blood. Because the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 46. Yani more than 46 in your body tissue. Okay. Saya tulis dengan jelas sikit lah. More than 46. Okay. So carbon dioxide from body tissues into your blood. Okay, diffuse across the wall of the blood capillaries. Okay. Okay, so next is gas transport, oxygen. Okay, so hemoglobin, as we know that hemoglobin is the pigment, okay, pigment in your red blood cells. Your red blood cell will have um, thousands, hundreds of thousands of hemoglobins, okay, hemoglobins. So hemoglobin is a pigment that carries oxygen. So basically hemoglobin is made up of protein. So the protein is made up of 4 polypeptide chain, okay, 4 subunit of polypeptide chain. So each of the subunit has a hem group. Okay, so in each of the hem group has an iron atom, okay, an iron atom, ferrum. So the function of the ferrum is to bind to oxygen molecule. So therefore, one hemoglobin can bind to 4 oxygen molecule. Okay, 4 oxygen molecule. Okay, so in the lungs, okay. So in the lungs, sama je dia punya explanation, as long as you know the difference in the partial pressure of oxygen and also the carbon dioxide partial pressure in different parts of your body lah, in the lungs, in the blood capillaries, in your body tissues. Okay, so due to the difference in partial pressure between the alveolus and blood capillaries, hemoglobin in the blood will be loaded up with oxygen to form oxyhemoglobin. So hemoglobin plus oxygen, it forms oxyhemoglobin. So itu daripada lungs, kan? So lungs is the source where oxygen will enter, and then oxygen enters into the blood, binds with hemoglobin to form oxyhemoglobin. So in the body tissues, oxygen is unloaded, okay, from oxyhemoglobin, releases oxygen to form deoxyhemoglobin. In this diagram, it shows you the difference in partial pressure of oxygen and also carbon dioxide in different parts of your body. Later, after this lecture, you do your revision, duduk senyap, and then you compare. Okay, you compare the partial pressure of oxygen and also carbon dioxide in these different parts of the body. Okay, so that you will know the movement, okay, the movement of oxygen ni, the diffusion of oxygen and carbon dioxide from, kalau oxygen from atmosphere into the lung, into blood capillaries, into body tissues. Carbon dioxide from body tissues into blood capillaries, into lungs, into the atmosphere, due to the difference in the partial pressure of these two gases. Okay, so same goes to this diagram. It shows you the transportation of oxygen, okay, and also carbon dioxide. So here it shows you what happened kalau ke atas ni, in the lungs lah. Ini in your body tissues. Okay, sama. Lungs and also body tissues. Okay, so kalau untuk oxygen, as you can see, kita start dengan alveolus dulu. Okay, so alveolus, yang ini, but this guna 0.104. Mana yang dia guna? Sekejap ya. 105. So kat sini untuk diagram ni awak tukar ya. Please, can you change the pressure? 105. Okay. So you can see the difference in the partial pressure. So in the alveolus, the partial pressure of oxygen is 105. Okay. Compared to in the blood capillaries, it is 100. So high to low. And then as the blood reaches your body tissues, the partial pressure is around 40. So oxygen diffuse out into your blood, into your body tissues, from blood into your body tissues. Vice versa, kalau untuk carbon dioxide, because your body cells is respiring, producing byproduct which is carbon dioxide, so the partial pressure of carbon dioxide in your body tissue will be higher. So more than 46 enters into your diffuse across the wall of blood capillaries into the blood where the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is 46. Then, so and then travels along your blood, your circulatory system to the heart. Heart pumps to the lungs. So in the lungs, the partial pressure is 40. And so from 46 to 40, obviously carbon dioxide will diffuse out into the alveolus to be exhaled out. Okay. Okay, so now next we are going to look at gas transport for carbon dioxide. Okay, so carbon dioxide is transported in bloodstream in 3 forms. Okay, so the first form of carbon dioxide, 7 to 10% as dissolved carbon dioxide in the blood plasma. Okay, 7 to 10% as dissolved carbon dioxide in the blood plasma. Second, 20% bind to hemoglobin. Hemoglobin is the pigment inside your red blood cell. And then the majority of the carbon dioxide, which is 72, is in the form of bicarbonate ions. Okay, HCO3 minus. Okay, HCO3 minus. Okay, so kalau kat sini, sebab now we are looking at carbon dioxide, right? So now we have to start with your tissue cells. Okay, tissue cells that produces carbon dioxide, which is the byproduct of cellular respiration. Okay, so it diffuses out of your body tissue cells, okay, into the interstitial fluid and across the wall of blood capillaries and into your blood. Okay, in your blood, 7 to 10% as dissolved carbon dioxide. 20% dia akan masuk dalam punya red blood cells. In your red blood cells, there's hemoglobin. Bind with hemoglobin. Okay, bind with hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. Ini hemoglobin lah ni. Kan? So, 20% of the carbon dioxide bind with hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin. The rest of the carbon dioxide will react with water, carbon dioxide with water, and the reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase to form carbonic acid, H2CO3. This H2CO3 will dissociate to form bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. Bicarbonate ion diffuse out of the red blood cells, travels in your blood plasma as bicarbonate ion, HCO3, 72% of it. 72% of carbon dioxide is in the form of bicarbonate ion. Okay. So, awak tengok reaction carbonic acid ni, dia akan split jadi bicarbonate ion and hydrogen ion. Hydrogen ion, when it is released in your blood, what is the characteristics of hydrogen ion? It causes your blood to be acidic. Okay, acidic causes the pH of your blood to drop. In order to make sure homeostasis occurs, to make sure your blood, your body fluid is maintained at 7.4, hemoglobin ni, another function of the hemoglobin, it binds to the hydrogen ion. So this prevents your blood from becoming acidic. Okay, prevents your blood from becoming acidic. It prevents your blood from dropping below than 7.4. pH 7.4 is the normal pH. But when you are exercising or when your body cell produces more carbon dioxide, in order to prevent your blood from becoming too acidic, the hemoglobin will function as pH buffer. Okay, pH buffer. So it binds, the hemoglobin binds with the hydrogen ion. Okay, from this reaction. Right? Okay, so that is what happened in your the transportation of carbon dioxide in your body tissue. But as the blood travels back to the lung, okay, once the blood reaches the lung, the capillaries surrounding the blood the alveolus, so vice versa reaction akan berlaku. Okay, so bicarbonate ion in the blood plasma will enter back into the red blood cells. Okay, hemoglobin before it binds to the hydrogen ion, will release the hydrogen ion. So bicarbonate ion binds with the hydrogen ion to form back carbonic acid, and then an enzyme, the same enzyme, which is carbonic anhydrase, catalyzes the same reaction, the reverse reaction, which is from carbonic acid split into becomes carbon dioxide and also water. Carbon dioxide that is formed, diffuse out of the red blood cells into the blood plasma and diffuse out of the blood capillaries into the diffuse across the wall of the alveolus into the alveolus, okay, to be exhaled. Okay, exhale. So nampak pulmonary, this is the pulmonary capillaries surrounding the alveolus. Okay. So reaction ni awak kena ingat. Alright. Okay, so gas transport carbon dioxide. So about 7% of the carbon dioxide dissolve in blood plasma. Okay. Ni yang paling sikit lah. While the remaining will diffuse in the red blood cells. So red blood cells tu tadi yang akan berlaku yang reaction yang tadi tu, yang where 20% of the carbon dioxide will bind with hemoglobin to form carbaminohemoglobin HbCO2, and the rest, which is 72%, will react with water to form carbonic acid, and the reaction is catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase. So this carbonic acid will split or dissociate into bicarbonate ion and also hydrogen ion. So this percentage is referring to this actually, 72% as bicarbonate ion. Okay. Yang ini akan bind dengan hemoglobin to make sure your blood pH is maintained at 7.4. Prevents your blood from becoming acidic. Okay, so in the red blood cells, carbonic acid dissociate into bicarbonate ion and also hydrogen ion, the same info. So hemoglobin binds most of the hydrogen ion from the carbonic acid, preventing the hydrogen ion from acidifying the blood. Okay, so the blood pH has to maintain at 7.4. If not, dia akan drop. Jadi maybe 7.2 or even lower. So you don't want your blood pH to fall below than 7.2. So most of the bicarbonate ion diffuses into the plasma, carried in the bloodstream until it reaches the lung. So the lung, bila dia reach the lung, vice versa reaction berlaku lah, dia akan masuk balik dalam red blood cells, bergabung dengan hydrogen ion to form carbonic acid, kan? The reverse reaction. Okay? Carbonic acid, and then the carbonic acid catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase, jadi semula carbon dioxide and also water, the reverse reaction, okay, when it reaches the lungs. Okay. So sama lah, ini the same information, the repetition. Okay, so in the lungs, bicarbonate ion diffuses from the plasma, okay, from the plasma into the red blood cells. Ini bila dah reach the lungs, okay, combining with hydrogen ion released from hemoglobin and forming carbonic acid, okay. So ini bila dah reach lungs, bicarbonate ion yang 72% tu tadi masuk balik dalam red blood cells, react with combine with hydrogen ion released from hemoglobin. Jadi semula carbonic acid catalyzed by the enzyme carbonic anhydrase to form carbon dioxide and water. Carbon dioxide will enter into the alveolus through the process of diffusion. Okay, so next we are going to look at oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. What is this? Oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. It is a graph. Okay, a graph showing the amount of oxygen that hemoglobin can carry. As you know, the function of hemoglobin is to bind with oxygen so that your blood become oxygen-rich blood. Okay. So showing the amount of oxygen that hemoglobin carries at different oxygen pressure. Different oxygen pressure is referring to yang significant lah. Partial pressure of oxygen in the lungs, partial pressure of oxygen in the body tissues at rest, and also body tissues during exercise. Okay, so this gives you the oxyhemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay, so the degree of hemoglobin saturation, it means that the hemoglobin is packed full with oxygen, it binds with the oxygen, okay? So the degree of oxygen saturation is determined by the partial pressure of oxygen, which varies in different organs throughout the bodies. Different organs, obviously, yang paling obvious in the lungs versus your other organs in the body, okay? Your other organs in the body. Okay, so when these values are graphed, they produce oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve. Ini dia sambung lah kan, oxyhemoglobin or oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve, same thing. Okay, so oxygen hemoglobin dissociation curve is an S-shaped curve. Macam tu lah. Okay. Okay, S-shaped curve with a nearly flat slope at high partial pressure of oxygen and a steep slope at low partial pressure of oxygen. Okay. Kenapa flat dekat top? Sebab all the hemoglobin is packed or has fully bound to oxygen molecule. Okay. Macam inilah dia punya graph dia, okay? S-shaped, okay, S-shaped curve. Okay, so kita tengok the point one by one. Okay, so in the lungs, okay, so in the lungs, the partial pressure of oxygen is approximately 100 millimeter mercury. Okay, it gives here 100 millimeter mercury in the lungs. Okay. At this partial pressure, hemoglobin has a higher affinity for oxygen and it is 98% saturated. Okay, 98% of the hemoglobin is saturated with oxygen, okay, to form oxyhemoglobin. So that is in the lung. Okay, so this become oxygen rich blood lah kan. So the oxygen rich blood then goes to your body tissues. Okay, or your body tissues. So in the tissues of other organ at rest, dalam keadaan awak bertenang, rehat, tak buat apa-apa, okay. So at rest, a typical partial pressure of oxygen is around 40 millimeter mercury. Nampak? At rest, partial pressure of oxygen is 40 lah kan. So at this point, the hemoglobin is 75% saturated. So maksudnya orang nampak ya kat sini, asalnya kat sini adalah oxygen rich blood. Okay, then the blood travels to your body tissues. The blood that carries hemoglobin that binds to the oxygen, so dia akan release oxygen. Oxygen is released by the hemoglobin, kan? So released. So this is the amount of the oxygen released from the hemoglobin. Oxygen unloaded. Yeah, oxygen unloaded to the tissue at rest. Unloaded daripada apa? Daripada yang oxyhemoglobin tu tadi lah. HbO2 tadi. Macam tu ke? HP. Sorry itu hemoglobin. Oxyhemoglobin lah. Okay. So here hemoglobin has a lower affinity for oxygen and releases some but not all of the oxygen in the tissues. Bila oxyhemoglobin reaches your body tissues, because in the tissues the partial pressure of oxygen is low, this causes the hemoglobin to have a lesser affinity to bind to oxygen. So oxygen is released. Oxygen is unloaded from hemoglobin so that the oxygen can enter into your body tissue to be used for cellular respiration. Okay. Tapi bukan semua hemoglobin diriliskan. So dia akan make sure the hemoglobin will still be 75% saturated with oxygen after that. Okay. After the release of the oxygen. That is tissue at rest. So for tissue that is actively used, or for example during exercise, as you can see, so this is the amount of oxygen that will be released by the hemoglobin. Okay, so oxygen unloaded to tissue during exercise. Tapi bukan semua oxygen will be released from the hemoglobin. So after that, the oxygen is still about 18% saturated or 20% saturated with oxygen. Okay, the hemoglobin is there's still oxygen bound to the hemoglobin. Okay. Okay, so kita dah tahu kan carbon dioxide, it reacts with water to form carbonic acid. Carbonic acid dia akan split jadi bicarbonate ion CHO3 minus kan, and also hydrogen ion. The presence of hydrogen ion will cause the blood to be acidic. So this lowers the pH. Normally is 7.4, it becomes 7.2. Sikit je perubahan dia, tapi that is not at the homeostatic set point tu kan. So dia bukan dalam pada set point. So 7.4, this drop in pH causes the hemoglobin to have a lower or a decrease in the affinity for hemoglobin. Lower pH causes hemoglobin to release more oxygen, decrease the affinity of hemoglobin for oxygen, and the oxygen will be released kan. So this is what we call it as the Bohr shift. The curve moves to the right. Okay, ini dalam keadaan asal yang dotted lines ni, dotted graph ni dalam keadaan normal. But when you are exercising, your cell produces more carbon dioxide. Carbon dioxide produces more carbonic acid, split to become hydrogen ion, causes your blood to be more acidic, drop the pH to 7.2, causes your hemoglobin to have less affinity for hemoglobin. Hemoglobin has less affinity for oxygen. Okay, more oxygen will be released lah. So that's why the graph will shift to the right. Okay, so this is called as the Bohr shift. pH rendah sebabkan more carbon dioxide release. Hemoglobin has lower affinity for oxygen. More oxygen will be released to the respiratory tissue. Okay, so thus where carbon dioxide production is greater, kan? Sebab tadi apa exercise contohnya, kan? More carbon dioxide produced, hemoglobin releases more oxygen which can be used to support more cellular respiration. So this is the Bohr shift. The curve shift to the right, releasing more oxygen. Hemoglobin has lesser affinity for hemoglobin. Okay, lesser affinity. Lesser affinity means release more oxygen. Okay. Okay, so I hope you understand on this hemoglobin dissociation curve. Okay, so next we are going to look at the control of breathing. Okay, the control of breathing. Okay, so breathing is regulated by involuntary mechanism and involve negative feedback. You cannot control it dalam keadaan yang it is involuntary. Okay, breathing is regulated by involuntary mechanism and involve negative feedback mechanism. This is to ensure that gas exchange is coordinated with blood circulation and also metabolic demand. Okay, so dia supaya awak punya gas exchange dia selari dengan metabolic rate awak dan juga blood circulation awak. Okay, so this is controlled by the region in your brain which is the medulla oblongata. Okay, so medulla oblongata regulates your breathing. So the neural signaling in the medulla forms a pair of breathing control centers or the respiratory centers. Okay, nama lain ni lah kan. So in the medulla oblongata that is responsible for breathing kan. So it is the respiratory centers in the brain. So specialized chemoreceptors are sensitive to changes in carbon dioxide and hydrogen ion concentration. So kita ada dua tempat for chemoreceptor. Satu adalah central chemoreceptor in the medulla. The central chemoreceptor in the medulla in the brain, it is sensitive to hydrogen ion concentration. Okay, hydrogen ion concentration but not to carbon dioxide. But for the peripheral chemoreceptors, which is located in the walls of aorta, we call it as the aortic body, kan? So ini adalah peripheral. Dia terletak pada aortic bodies in the aorta, and the other location is in the carotid arteries, which is the carotid body lah. Okay, so these are the two locations for the peripheral chemoreceptors. So the peripheral chemoreceptors are stimulated by high concentration of carbon dioxide partial pressure and also hydrogen ion concentration. Ingat kalau central chemoreceptor pada hydrogen ion saja, tapi kalau peripheral untuk kedua-dua carbon dioxide and also hydrogen ion concentration. Okay, so when atrial partial pressure increases, okay, atrial partial pressure increases means that your body is producing more carbon dioxide, undergoes high rate of cellular respiration. Okay, some of the carbon dioxide diffuses into the cerebrospinal fluid, okay, fluid in your brain, and then the carbon dioxide reacts with water and causes the formation of hydrogen ion. Tadi kan carbon dioxide bertindak balas dengan air, dia jadi carbonic acid, split into bicarbonate ion dan juga hydrogen ion. So this increase in hydrogen ion will be detected by central chemoreceptor. Okay, central chemoreceptor will detect the high increase of hydrogen ion in the cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, so this serves as the stimulus. Okay, the stimulus. So the stimulus will be sent in the form of impulse to the respiratory center. Kat mana tadi? Kat medulla kan? Medulla oblongata tadi. So the brain will interpret the corrective mechanism. So the response will be increase in the depth and breathing of in the rate of breathing. Okay, increase the depth and the rate of breathing. So to remove more carbon dioxide until the partial pressure of carbon dioxide is lowered and the breathing rate returns to normal. So this is when you produce more carbon dioxide. Hydrogen ion will be formed, detected by the central chemoreceptor, sent to the respiratory center in the medulla oblongata, and then the corrective mechanism is to increase depth and rate of breathing. Okay, so the next condition is partial pressure of carbon dioxide and the hydrogen ion concentration increase. Okay, so detected by the peripheral chemoreceptor. Dekat mana tadi? Carotid body in the aorta and also, aortic body. Okay, aortic bodies in the aorta and also carotid bodies in the carotid artery. Ada dua tempat lah. Okay, aortic body dekat aorta lah. And then the other one, carotid bodies in the carotid arteries. So this is stimulated by the high concentration of carbon dioxide and also hydrogen ion. So dia bertindak sebagai stimulus keadaan ni. High carbon dioxide and high hydrogen ion. So this stimulus is sent in the form of impulse to the respiratory center in the medulla oblongata. Okay, medulla oblongata. And then which is the brain interpret the corrective mechanism. So the response will be same, which is increase the depth and the rate of breathing to remove more carbon dioxide until the carbon dioxide concentration is lowered. Okay, and then the breathing rate return to normal. Okay, so sama. So as a person breathe deeply, okay, a negative feedback mechanism prevents the lung from over expanding. When you inhale, you want to expand your lung. Okay, your lungs, so that the volume increase, the pressure decrease. But you do not want the lungs to over expand. So nanti dia pecah lah, kan? So this, how to prevent is through negative feedback. Okay, how to prevent over expanding of the lung is through negative feedback. So during inhalation, senses detect stretching of the lung tissue as stimulus. Okay, as stimulus. So the stimulus is in the form of impulse are sent to the medulla, inhibiting further inhalation. Okay, so ada takap point yang awak boleh inhale. Okay, so that the volume of the lung reaches the right volume and not over expanding. Okay, so this is controlled by the medulla lah, can the respiratory centers. Okay, in the medulla oblongata. Okay, so this is the homeostatic control of your blood pH. So blood pH is has to be maintained at 7.4. If your body cells is respiring actively, producing more carbon dioxide, so this causes more hydrogen ion to be formed and lower the pH, causes the pH of the blood to lower and become acidic. So you do not want your blood pH to fall below 7.4. So this is the hydrogen ion concentration, okay, will be detected by the respiratory center, okay, in the yang tadi ni, in the central chemoreceptor. Yang ni awak boleh jot down, central chemoreceptor. Sebab apa? Central chemoreceptor dia hanya detect hydrogen ion concentration in the, yang ni apa? Cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, cerebrospinal fluid. So and then another part is the peripheral, the peripheral chemoreceptor. Okay, that is located at the carotid arteries and also aortic bodies ni. Okay, so this detect partial pressure of carbon dioxide and also hydrogen ion concentration yang tinggi. Okay, so this is then sent to the respiratory center in the medulla oblongata, so that the corrective response will be carried out, which is to increase the rate and depth of breathing. Okay, so rib muscles and also diaphragm increase rate and depth of ventilation, breathing lah. So release or exhale more carbon dioxide. Okay, exhale or release more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere, so that your blood pH can be maintained back or returned back to 7.4. Okay. Okay, so next is on lung cancer. So yang ini lung cancer ni, you are very familiar with smoking that causes lung cancer. So instead of me reading the slide, it is still the same, the information. You can read the slide on your own. I am going to share with you a video. I am going to play a video. So you just watch the video on lung cancer. Yang slide tu you all boleh baca sendiri, kan? Baca sendiri on lung cancer that caused by smoking and all that. Okay, I am going to share with you.